and how is it relevant to me and what I wish to achieve in the projects that I work on. And those who are in between, I know the question in your mind is, are there costs involved? What are the costs involved, and the benefits? We need to see numbers and case studies. So today we begin with the basics of circular economy on the sprint, and with the question, what is not a circular economy? You are right, circular, it refers to the shape. So in this particular model, it looks like a line. So this one is what we call the linear economy. So if you look at the line, it starts with resource extraction, production, distribution, consumption, and dispose. And some of you are working in different aspects of this economy. But the assumption of this kind of model is that there are infinite resources and also that there is infinite regenerative capacity of the earth, meaning we can take whatever we want, and then make everything that we need. But then when we waste it, the earth will just basically regenerate itself and recover. But that is not circular economy. So we want to bend the line, and the circle, if you look at the circle or the diagram of the circular economy in the next slide, it starts with shifting to a system where we, number one, design out waste and pollution. Look at the top right corner of this diagram. It says design out waste and pollution. A lot of your projects and initiatives are probably focused already on this first principle. The second principle is keep products and materials in use. How do we make sure that the materials that we produce from natural resource extraction stay as long as they could so that we don't need to extract more? And then lastly, the third principle is something that a lot of us are actually still trying to achieve. How do we, when we create economic activities, products and services, beside from not polluting or wasting and also just keeping products and materials in use, how do we regenerate natural systems? That's a third principle, and usually that's the most difficult part of our projects. So today, we are going to ask first. I know some of you just came in. Please log in to menti.com. We wish that you would participate on this call at menti.com using the code 97343449. So try that. Let's open our browsers and point to menti.com 97343449, and we are seeing answers coming in. Are your projects aligning with the principles of circular economy? So if your projects are designing out waste and pollution or regenerating natural systems, and if you're not sure, if you're not involved in any environmental sustainability project, there are also options for those. All right. The 15 answers so far. Thank you for your responses. This way we can see also where the community is, or the room, where the others are. There's many people involved, 9 at least out of 23 are designing out waste and pollution with their projects and initiatives. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Dave Albao, and if this came in, we are now discussing the principles of circular economy, which you see on your screen. It's design out waste and pollution, keep products and materials in use, regenerate natural systems. Thank you for your responses. We've got 27 so far. Okay, so moving on. The question that we were asking was, what is circular economy and how actually does it look like? So one model that maybe is familiar to you is the common way of expressing circular delivery is the milkman model. So the milkman comes to your door with milk, and then after you've consumed all the milk, the milkman returns and exchanges your empty bottles with another set of pre-filled milk bottles. So this usually uses glass, and this is a very common circular practice. So if we look at the economic models that we are looking at the screen, you see shapes there. There's a line, there's a circle with lines coming out of it and coming in. And then the third circle is the circular economy. So you see that the circular economy, materials are kept in the loop. Okay, but right now, most likely we are between linear economy and the economy with feedback loops. And if you see, recycling is a component of this economy. And one item that we're particularly interested in is plastic. And there is also a focus on circular plastics economy. So is plastic the enemy, or is it actually our BFF, our best friend forever? So there's a love story to this. Of course, we know that plastic is useful, convenient, and cheap. Because of these qualities, plastic is desirable, and it helps us in our daily lives. It protects us, it's light, and it's built to last. However, these same qualities actually cause plastic to be a threat to the environment. So it ends up in the environment, and that creates a bad romance. So if you look at the next slide, you would see why this is a bad romance for the environment. It harms habitats and species, especially the oceans. About 8 million tons of plastic end up in our oceans annually. And it could also cause the decline of the ocean's economic benefits to us of up to 2.5 trillion US dollars a year. There are studies and models that are available on how plastic could impact sectors like fisheries, aquaculture, and tourism. And also, the infrastructure and logistics for solid waste management are either not in place or not efficient for plastic to be recycled. So really, it ends up in the ocean, and it causes harm not just to the wildlife, but also to our ecosystem that we also benefit from. In the time of COVID, it's definitely very visible because there's a lot of disposable products that are in demand. It's understandable because the communities are conscious of not passing on the contagion. So you see that disposable, not just medical equipment, but also all the PPEs that everyone uses. There's a lack of facilities to process to process them. There's also loss of funding and mobility for projects that try to battle or try to mitigate the impacts of pollution. And of course, there's also an increase in e-commerce activity with all your food deliveries. I know everyone's probably have ordered via Grab or Food Panda or Shopee or Lazada. It's a reality that we all face. Look at this photo. It is nominated for this year's Ocean Photography Award, and you see a seahorse attached to a disposable mask. So looking into the future, oh, there's a Menti question again. Let's try to see. During the pandemic, what single-use plastic item was unavoidable for you during all this time? And you wish that there was an accessible and affordable alternative. If you still haven't logged into Menti for this session, please go to menti.com and enter the code 97343449. Okay, a lot of online deliveries for sure. Face shields, definitely no choice if it's required. I wonder, well, face shields, if they're durable, they could be reusable. Then you have to make sure that they last, and you don't leave them behind or leave them behind, lose them. Okay, thank you everyone for your responses. Now we're curious about the future. How then circular economy is relevant to our work in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals? How can it contribute to the 2030 agenda? So let's review a little bit about the Sustainable Development Goals. Again, on menti.com, please log in and enter the code 97343449 and look at the summary of the Sustainable Development Goals. They are grouped into 4 categories. There's social goals from SDGs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, economic goals from 7 to 11, environmental goals from 12 to 15, and fostering peace and partnership for goals 16 and 17. A lot of you are working on environmental goals, 14 out of 21. And definitely, I think you can also check all of the categories of these goals. Thank you. So now, if we look in and zoom in the Sustainable Development Goals, we now ask the question: how can circular economy contribute to each SDG, and why is this relevant when our projects are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals and we're working to build a circular economy? How can this work contribute to all of those indicators? Take for example SDG 14, or life below water. Each SDG has a target. As some of us know here, there are targets and indicators below. So SDG 14's first target is actually reduce marine pollution. And the indicator for it is the index of floating plastic debris intensity, which should be reduced. The goal is for this indicator is to reduce it significantly by the year 2025. So again, the SDGs have targets and indicators that we're all contributing to. And circular economy, for example, in terms of plastic floating in the ocean, that's definitely a specific indicator under SDG 14. But what about the other indicators? For example, gender equality, or SDG 5, or SDG 8, which is decent work and economic growth, and also SDG 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. If we look closely, we know that there are cross-cutting issues that would need to be addressed for a circular plastics economy and a circular economy in general. So we know that all of the work that we're doing should contribute, or at least indirectly, to the other SDGs, and that is the perspective that we want to see. When zooming in and zooming out. Thank you for the heart. Salamat sa kapuso. Now, how do we do it? Yes, so we know now circular, but now let me present to you another shape and the inverted pyramid of the action hierarchy in the circular economy. So this is actually the 3 R's plus 2 additional R's, which is rethink and redesign. So if you look at this pyramid, and by the way, you will receive resources on circular economy, and you will see different strategies, approaches, and also technologies, mechanisms, and schemes between these 5 R's of action. Again, it's rethink, reduce, redesign, reuse, and recycle. And the ideal is that the core of our work in circular economy is rethinking, so that we reduce and conserve materials instead of dealing with them downstream, which is recycling, which leads me to the next slide. And I hope you're catching up. I hope this is useful for you, and ask questions, please, in the chat. And we will also be hearing about how and what in the next 5 minutes. So in our work in circular economy, next slide, please. We will see, of course, we will always talk about challenges and benefits. So I know a lot of you have these in mind: the financial challenges, upfront investment, high transition costs, economic viability of recycling. What about institutional challenges? The mindsets that are already linear for a long time, the lack of political will, regulatory barriers, and also other sets of challenges, which are on the next slide. The social challenges, for example, resistance to change from communities and the lack of awareness. The technical aspects, which are logistics, reverse logistics, and the lack of information exchange. So let me ask you on menti.com with the code 97343449 again, and I think you're getting used to this now. Can you tell us which of these challenges are you encountering and need to improve on in relation to your work, so that we can see if we can align challenges of circular economy with yours? I mean, your concerns with the transition towards circular economy, and how we could all address those challenges. So a lot are actually asking social or answering social. Financial, definitely, and institutional. Thank you so much. Valuable insights. We can see the pulse of the room. You can see where people are in addressing these challenges. Interesting insight. Thank you so much. I was surprised that social would be on the top. So of course, then what are the benefits? I mean, why would we go there? Why do we want to transition to a circular economy? Definitely, we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We're contributing to mitigating climate change with this economic model. We are strengthening local communities supposedly, and the producers are profiting from a model at the same time, because without that they would not be able to participate. So there's also employment opportunities, increase in productivity, and increase in savings. A lot of these could be expressed in numbers. So we're also now curious on menti.com. Again, if you refresh your Menti with the same code, can you tell us which of these benefits directly relate to your current work? We would like to see if we align with also the benefits the circular economy would be bringing to us. Let's see if there will be answers. Answers coming in quickly. I love Menti, by the way, because it just shows you. Sometimes it surprises you. I love data when it's visualized. So definitely a lot or majority also aim for the benefit of lower pollution or reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing pollution. Interestingly, I see increase in savings as quite low compared to that. It's an interesting insight. Okay, thank you again. 27 out of 66. I hope on the next Menti slides you would also pitch in for those who have still not responded to our Menti poll. All right, let's move on to the next. I know you would be asking me what are circular economy models that are already out there. So there are local circular initiatives, and there are definitely more high-tech innovations in the world. So let me focus on four. I think I have four or three circular models today. The first one is something that I'm personally involved with. Our question was, how can we redesign the Sari Sari store to reduce the sachets? There are 800,000 Sari Sari stores in the Philippines. Is it possible for the products that they sell to be dispensed instead in containers, but with the same volumes and with the same price points and with the same quality or brands? So that was our question, and we prototyped 8 refilling stations, and we learned a lot from that. What the project was supported by USAID, and some corporations, FMCG corporations, have been interested in how this would work in terms of logistics and reverse logistics. And there are collaborations now happening in redesigning this. But you have challenges, of course, in this: the upfront costs, the logistics that are not yet there, not established. You also have questions about sanitation or product quality, making sure that the product's not contaminated. How do you ensure that? And that usually is a big barrier in the regulatory space. So there are challenges here, but also the potential of it to reduce the amount of sachets by design or at source. Instead of focusing on recovery, how about reducing them, by design or at the very first place? So this was the question that the Walausik Sari Sari stores. Walausik is actually a Hiligaynon, or a local term for nothing is wasted. It is it's a traditional zero waste model of our community. So another case model is called Bear Pack. A quick breeze through the case studies, and I will be now turning over to our numbers. We want to see the cost and benefits. So Bear Pack, basically it's a container for your food when you order on Grab or Food Panda, but it is a shared reuse system that they're promoting here, meaning those containers will be returned. And there are a lot of participating restaurants and cafes where this can be used, and it's an option and it's a subscription. So you install the app and you register, and they can track the use of these containers. Now, there are questions involved here, of course. Who washes the containers? Who takes the cost of cleaning them? How about what happens if you lose the container? And all other technical questions, of course, in this model. But this is gaining momentum. People are actually installing and using this system. The last case study that I'm presenting is Nudie Jeans. So Nudie Jeans is a brand of jeans, and it's interesting because they're not promoting the purchase of your jeans. You know, like, I mean, not in the way that they say if you buy a pair of jeans, it should last kind of forever. You know, so their shops are repair shops as well. So repair models, making sure that the product, you know, really maximize the lifetime of a certain material. So interesting model, and look up Nudie Jeans if you have the interest in this kind of business model. And now, if we move to the next, yeah, now I know you are asking costs and benefits. You know, what are the costs, and how do we express these in numbers? So let me welcome today a specialist, our Dr. Marian Bigum.
Hello, thank you all for being here. This is truly, I'm so excited about this topic. I've worked with it for so many years, and it really is one of the key things we need to be doing globally to achieve some of our changes. So let's look at some numbers. So why is this really a good idea, the circular economy? I mean, it is difficult. What we need to do, what we're aiming at, is really shifting the system. And that can be difficult to a lot, and say, oh, but we know it's always easier when you know what you have, but you don't know what you're gonna get. But when we actually look at the numbers, this is good for a number of reasons. With a circular economy, we do see an increase. We would be expecting a global potential growth by 2030 of $4.5 trillion. Additionally, we'll be seeing an increase in the GDP by 2030. We'll see annual savings from reduced costs of waste production and disposal. And really, from point of view, when we're working with in ADB with countries that are developing or in the process of developing, if we could reduce the cost of waste production and disposal, that is funding we could be using for something else, and that is the funding that would be going into growing businesses and growing the economy. Now, why are we saving this money? Well, we're doing it because we are decreasing the need for raw materials. We are also seeing an annual reduction in the cost for mobility, food, and the built environment that is quite substantial. And finally, like Dave was also saying, the circular economy is expected, if we can, and we can, but if we continue to work on it, we can really see a massive reduction in global emissions by 2032 of 39%. And this is not, we're talking a lot about CO2, but it is really a benefit to all of the environmental impact categories. Next slide, please. So this is a really good figure. I know it's a lot of detail, but this shows, so to the left, you can see the impacts by source on natural and capital resources. You see the orange is the supply chain impact, and the blue is the direct impact. And when looking at the sources, food and beverage, personal and household goods, and retail as an example, what is very, very clear is that the impacts from these really takes place in the supply chain, not in the direct impact. And this really emphasizes the need for a systematic change in the value chain, for a system change. It is not something that the consumer can do on its own. It's not where we should be aiming our targets. It is really about changing the current linear economy to a circular economy by working with the value chain. Now, on the right, we see greenhouse gas emissions for 4 industries that were studied. Now, just taking the middle one with the most orange, it says the share of emissions by source. Again, it shows that really the supply chains are where we are seeing the current pollution from our economic system, from our production. So it's clear that this is really where we should be aiming change and putting the focus. However, when looking at the other one with the majority of the pie being blue, it says companies that engage their suppliers to address embedded emissions. And we see that 2/3 of that, 75%, are not tackling this issue by talking to the suppliers. So we really need to have a change in mindset and a change of focus. And I can very much highlight that The issue is not on the consumer, it really is on the financial model and on the industries that we need to be working together with if we when we want to tackle this. Do I have more slides? Next slide. Or are we back to Dave?
Back to me, actually. So we are going to do a quick quiz to check if people have understood the principles of a circular economy. Let's do a check. I hope you're still on Mentimeter. We want to ask a few questions, and this is going to be Mythbusters. So Doc Marianne and I are going to be asking some questions. So please answer. If you are not yet on Mentimeter, you can go back. You'll see the code in the next slide. So we're asking, what is circular by design? So are glass bottles circular by design? And when we say by design, it's how it was created to be reused again. And we specifically put a maybe because sometimes I feel like this is quite confusing. And then there's an answer that it's linear. Okay, we have more answers coming in. Thank you for still sticking with us. That the Menti code, you can still definitely join. Okay, can we see the answer? It is circular. Why is it circular, Doc Marianne?
It is circular in when we ensure that it is recycled into new bottles. It is circular in the way that it and I just put it actually in the chat to just repeat the principles. It is circular in the way that it's designing out waste and pollution because it's reusable. It is really about it's circular because it's aligning with principle number 2 on keeping products and materials in use, and that is really it's a multi-use product. So that means that it's reducing the need for virgin materials. Now, if you were to, when it comes to recycling, glass bottles are almost infinitely recyclable. You have some loss, but you can also, if you mix it with other things or you put it in cement, then obviously it's not recyclable. So that's why it's almost infinitely recyclable when you use it in a bottle-to-bottle loop. And that's really important because sand is also a material that is scarce and that there's a global demand for.
Learn something new every day. Let's check the next question. Are clear PET bottles circular by design? Clear PET bottles. PET bottles are the usual plastic bottles that we see for, let's say, soda or bottled water, or even some of the condiments like soy sauce that we purchase. We're seeing different answers. There's more no's than yeses, and then 11 no's. Trick question. Let's see what the real answer is. 26 people answered no. Dun, dun, dun. We should have had sound effects for this. So Doc Marianne, why are they circular?
I actually put maybe, but they are certain. no, but yes,
maybe.
It's because there really is, and that's, I think also it depends, and that's an annoying question, but I think that really reflects also why so many people put no, that it's linear. Because PET bottles, PET bottles, clear bottles are highly recyclable, and that is really good compared to when we look at circular economy criteria number 2 about keeping products and especially the materials in use. But you can have single-use PET bottles and you can have multi-use PET bottles. And obviously the multi-use PET bottles would be circular, but the single-use, not so much. That would fall into the recycling economy. And then it is really, another thing is really important is that what it is that you recycle it to. You need to be recycled into new bottles, not into textiles or housing or something, because we want to be closing that loop. Now, in the transition phase, before we can use it and get that system to use it into bottles, you do it in other parts of the world, but in some countries you're not there yet. It's okay to use it for something else while still maintaining, but we need to move it up a notch and do it much better, because it really is about minimizing the virgin production for single use.
Right. And also the label and the cap are not circular, right? The thin plastics that we have the brand on definitely cannot be recycled or reused.
The caps actually can. I have a bag here somewhere behind me of it, so you can actually cut that up and recycle them as well.
If they're separated.
If they're separate. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
PE materials, not PET, but sure.
Yeah. Okay, next question. This is an important topic. Are compostable bags circular by design? So the compostable bags, they are usually made of like bio-based. They're made of starch, cassava, and in the last maybe few years, they've gained more popularity, especially with now with like online deliveries, with food, the like retail. It's becoming more popular. So interesting answers here. There are 12 people who said yes, 12 who said no, and 7 who said maybe. Okay, let's see what the answer is. Compostable bags are linear. Why are they linear?
This is and this is really interesting because it is one of the go-to things that people would assume to be circular. But just the circular economy principles that we have is 1, design up waste and pollution, 2, keep products and materials in use, and 3, regenerate natural systems. Now, the compostable bags, you might think that it's designing out pollution, but biodegradability of compostable bags is actually, there's an international standard for that, and that requires for the plastic material to be decomposed in industrial composting facilities. So that requires 58 degrees Celsius, 3 months, and oxygen present to degrade. These conditions are not found in the marine environment or in nature. So making something compostable does not mean that it will disappear in nature. And even though even if it would, it wouldn't be instantly, and it would still serve a harm to the animals in the environment. So with this compostable bags or compostable plastics, you still need to have an efficient collection of these materials, bringing it back to an industrial composting facility. It won't biodegrade in a biogas facility, but it has to be a compostable facility. And then it would be turned into fertilizer. But the plastic itself would actually not have a nutrient value, so it's not going to be a good fertilizer. So this is a core example of designing for disposal instead of designing for circularity. And I think where it in your mind is typically for people seems to be circular is because it's regenerating the natural systems. But it really is not. It does not come back as a nutrient that plants can use, and it won't disappear in nature. So it is definitely linear.
Linear. Okay, that's new. That's news for some people. I also thought that they would be circular because the idea is that they're bio-based, right? Okay, so next question.
Actually, yeah, on the bio-based, actually compostable plastics are not often bio-based. I've seen examples of them being up to 70% fossil-based. And I actually just posted that question to the bio organization in Europe. So also a common misconception.
Yeah, I also thought that. And the next question is, are reusable bags circular by design? So those are your typical canvas bags that you bring to the supermarket, bring your own bag. These are often gifted in like conferences. You always get like a bag of swag, I would say. So are reusable bags circular by design? We have 19 yeses, 4 no's, and 2 maybes. I'm maybe on this one. What's our answer? Our answer is circular reusable bags. Why are they circular?
Definitely. When we look, it falls under the rethink. It is rethinking the take, make, and dispose model into what else can we do, and it is reducing and conserving materials, and it is eliminating single-use bags. And then it's circular because it falls under the third R, I think we called it. No, the second R, under reduce, where it really retains value and function. So whatever you can have that has a long lifetime and that is substituting something that would otherwise have been a take, make, dispose, that is circular.
Nice. Okay. And the last question that we have, and this is something that we are actually going to connect to another question that Perry posted in the Zoom chat, is a refill system circular by design? So earlier, Dave talked about the milkman model and the Walausik model and the bear pack model, which is sort of, in a way, a refillable system. But there are opportunity costs to this and resource costs to this. So why don't we bring back Dave? Marian will explain, and then the question actually was about the milkman model. And the question was, milkman model is great, but multinational companies tend not to re-employ it again, like Coca-Cola in the 70s, due to logistics issues, which is a huge topic for circular economy. How do we figure out the reverse logistics and logistics of bringing goods everywhere? So is there any policy or incentive for this? So the answer is it circular by design? It is circular by design. And then let's ask Marianne why, and then maybe Dave can chime in.
It's circular by design because it is designed to save on resources, save on waste. Similar to the principles before. And adding to that, the third one on regenerating natural systems, whenever we save resources, and that is also the recyclable resources, but especially the virgin resources, whenever we save resources, we have a lower environmental impact on the planet, and that contributes to regenerating the natural systems. So it ticks all boxes.
Nice. Okay, Dave, do you want to pick up on the milkman model question?
The milkman model is a refill system, but the refilling happens in a central facility. And it is right. Terry had really good feedback in many points during the presentation. One was the logistics issues. That's why they shifted to more disposable material. Because the logistics, there's costs involved, right? So, but my thoughts on this is that the costs are being transferred to others. Like the costs are being transferred to taxes of people paying the solid waste management, disposal and collection and recycling, which actually is not perfect in the Philippines. So the costs are being borne, or we bear the cost of it. And also the planet bears costs to it. And every time we have a natural disaster, every time we have a flood, every time we are affected by something like this, there are costs as well. And that doesn't fit in the profit and loss statements of, of course, the private sector. So this is something that we need to watch out for, because sometimes we talk about the costs, but the costs are somewhere else. And yeah.
Yeah. No, you don't have to cut. You can continue. I was just agreeing, but I don't know if Marian wants to add something as well.
Yes. Because it's always the debate. There's always a debate. For example, glass is heavier, and you will always hear narratives that, but it will also have a larger carbon footprint because of the fossil fuel that you need to move glass instead of plastic, which is lightweight, and it requires less travel.
Yes, Marianne.
And that is a general thing you would say. I mean, we've looked at the life cycle assessments of it. Transport is in general a very, very small part of the environmental cost of recycling, and definitely when it comes to reuse. But also we need to be looking into that simultaneously to the transition to a circular economy, we're transforming our energy system to be much more sustainable. So when we look at for just a little bit actually longer perspective, the energy that will be used for the transportation and in general will be much more green. So that will even lower even more minimize the impacts on transport. But it is below 10%, often 5% the transport costs, environmental cost.
I had a question about so reusable bags, right? They're meant to be circular, but I was thinking about the end of life of it. Like you can't if you throw it in, let's say, the landfill, it's not going to regenerate natural ecosystems, and it's not going to be like fertilizer. So how come it's still considered circular?
The reusable bags are, and I'm guessing a little bit here what they're consisting of. And normally they would be made like out of cotton, and you say cassava, which is I haven't felt with, but that's also a biological material, right? Nothing will biodegrade in a landfill because it doesn't have oxygen, but it is recyclable. And what we've seen also here is that we definitely have issues with cotton being produced, which is a big It uses a lot of water and it's produced in areas of the world that lack water. However, we also have an enormous textile production. And I mean, you could be making these out of recycled textiles, you know, old jeans or something, cut them up and make bags out of it. I have actually one of those for our pizza when we bring pizza. But in general, really, it is true that there's environmental cost with a cotton bag or a fabric bag. But it is, I did some calculations on it. It just means buying a t-shirt less also. So it's something you really need to be looking at it from a systemic point of view.
Great. Are there, and there's a comment here that I think the cassava and corn are okay, but there is the other more resistant materials that pose bigger problems. And those are probably like the petroleum-based ones, largely petroleum-based.
Maybe if I'd like to add, Anna, if that's okay, I think in terms
Sure.
in terms of behavior, you know, the material can change, but if the behavior and culture remains the same, which is a linear mindset. Remember the assumptions of that linear model is that everything is infinite. Our resources are infinite. So I think it really goes deep into that mindset of our mindset, whether we believe that the Earth's resources are there forever and enough for everyone, because the reality is not. And in fact, we are in the midst of a climate crisis, and greenhouse gas emissions need to be reduced or removed from the equation. Right, Doc Marian?
Affirmation, right?
Right.
If you have any more questions, please drop them in the chat. We have 5 minutes left, but if people want to stay on and ask more questions, then definitely you can stay. So because this is, we are being enriched by this discussion.
The goal, reducing our emissions and pollution, isn't that something measurable that we're all vying for, and also saving costs? But then that's the question. The costs are sometimes not expressed, because when we're spending to mitigate or address climate change impacts in our communities, we're spending money. Who's spending money? You know, so we're all just shifting, you know, the burden of the costs.
Right. There's always this issue of like who pays for this, right? And who bears the bigger cost of transitioning to the circular economy? Is it the national government, the financial institutions, and the multinational companies? Do you have any strong feelings on that? Strong feelings. Marian, I see you smiling.
I'm smiling because I was in the chat picking up on something. A question that on the cornstarch. Sorry.
So yeah,
this is a good question. Sorry. Shall we tax the multinationals like a carbon tax, channeling the tax to support circular economy like reverse logistics and behavior change? So I think this is also connected to what we call the extended producer responsibility, which is a policy that holds, it's similar to like the polluter must pay when they have to bear the cost of recovering their packaging, etc. Thoughts?
I think the inclusion of externalities is definitely something we should be doing, and that's what we call it in life cycle assessments. All of these environmental impacts of a product obviously should be reflected in the price of the products. That's a definite first start, but we need to be supplementing it with policies that also and guidance, nonetheless, that will guide us towards what should the alternative be, because we can ban something and we can put an extra price on it, but if the market, I'm not sure the market on its own will be making the right choices, because they don't always know either on what is then the circular economy alternative. And if they're not developing the right alternatives and they need guidance for that, we'll just see increase in prices that will hurt the communities and put an unfair financial burden on them. The point is really, how do we get the change? Definitely taxing and including the externalities, but it also needs to include other things.
Great. So I just want to do a quick time check. It's 2:58, but there are still more questions coming in. So if you do need to go, you may go. We invite you to join our second session, which is on October 7, and this will be about enabling and designing for circularity. Don't worry, we will sort out all the tech issues by then. And we also have a feedback form for you to tell us what you liked or what you didn't like about this format. We want to keep it continuously engaging. So that's why we have a tool like Mentimeter. But if there are other tools like maybe Mural or Padlet or Jamboard that we may explore, then you can definitely let us know in the feedback form. We are going to email you resources and the recording of this session, and also share the resources. Have the ones I said in the beginning. There are some recommendations for further reading, case studies, podcast recommendations, documentary recommendations, and we will send them via email. So definitely you will get those. So for those who need to go, you may already go. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Marian and Dave. Although I hope you can stay for a few more minutes because there are really interesting questions in the chat, and I'm also curious about what your thoughts are on this.
Can I start?
So, yeah.
Responding to Doc
Yeah.
Marian's.
So, okay. And then I'll just read out some other questions. What is your view of the bills that have been developed and filed in the Philippines to reduce single-use plastics? A very contentious bill. And then from Grip, hi Grip, are bans on single-use plastics the best option to start the circular economy momentum? I need to hear the answer to this, because I also want to know where is the good start, especially for the developing member countries. So you want to respond first, and then let's discuss like the issue of banning plastics.
Yes.
Go for it.
In our local experience, it does seem like a ban would be seen as an effective way. I remember a mayor say, in a plastic waste solution summit saying, if there is a bill that would ban the use of these materials anyway, it should be the best option. It's really top down. It's really just declaring something shouldn't be used anymore. And of course, as conservationists, sometimes we're all like, yes, we want that too. But then on the ground, we see that's not happening. That's not accepted by the communities. You would hear vendors cursing you for pushing bans on single-use plastic. You would hear consumers complaining at the checkout counters. And then you would have levies or taxes or fees on plastic. And sometimes people will adapt, and I believe people will adapt. But what I'm just saying is that in our experience, it's not an effective way necessarily. The bill that's being passed in the House, I support it, but only because I have seen that it's a tiered response. It's a phasing out of certain materials with timeframes and guidelines. So there is an opportunity to design the implementing rules and regulations of that bill to ensure that all stakeholders have the time and the resources, and somebody's paying for the transition for this and not them. And then just quickly before I also hear Doc Marian's thoughts on this, who have the resources of that we need, the capital, the technology, the R&D, the talents and the minds that will be put in. Who has the capital? It's not going to be a mother that's trying to feed her baby, while raising other two kids that are not able to go to school, so she can't do anything else but just do unpaid care work. That's something that matters to them. But if you talk about circular economy to them, they're gonna say, but if you're gonna ask me to pay more for what I'm usually pay for a sachet, is that equitable for them? So this is something very nuanced and complex, and we need to develop an equitable way. And usually the equitable way for those who have the ability to pay, that they can pay the costs.
There was also a question, and maybe I felt, Dave, I felt your passion, and you got triggered by that question. Yes, Doc Marian, take it away.
Yeah, it was is on the bans, because what I've seen, and we had in Europe this ban on single-use plastics being implemented. what I'm unfortunately seeing, because I'm very much, I mean, we need to be shifting from single use to multi-use, but what's in reality happening is that we're switching from single use plastics to single use something else. And that is just a shift in material. And those materials that we're switching to well, they also come with environmental cost. They also come with the need for waste management afterwards. We can't always recycle them. And it doesn't really it does not fit into the circular economy of preserving virgin resources. We're looking at a future where there will be more people that need to be increasing in wealth and living standards, obviously, and we simply need to be shifting away from the single use. So my point is always really to not just shift the materials, but shift the systems. And a ban like that doesn't do that. The way that I approach it and the way that we are approaching it in our product is, again, to be working with the industry in making that transition. Because as an industry, if they're told, well, I can't have I can't have plastic straws, well, I'm going to make them out of paper. But I mean, perhaps you could be redesigning the cups that where you normally use them, or simply start a cultural behavior change of not using straws. And this so a ban will not, the way that I've seen them implemented are not helping. And I think it's unfair to the industry, actually, also, not only to the environment and the people who will still be reliant and forced to pay for single-use items, but it's unfair for the industry who is making a transformation and spending, making investments in new materials and new technologies to produce these things, while it's a waste of resources also to them, because they're not investing in the right systems. So we're risking that in 5 years' time they need to be doing something else again.
Okay, great. We've had a lot of insights, new information today. And there are still questions coming in, but we're also mindful of the time. It's 3:05, and I'm sure everyone is going off to their next meetings and next appointments. So we are keeping track of all the questions, and we will address them over email. So if you didn't register, if you didn't pre-register, I know there were some issues, you can DM me. I was going to say the real Ana Oposa, but the one that's the co-host, you can DM me your email so that we can make sure that you get the answers to these questions, the recording of the session, and also the resources called Full Circle, where we have further reading, case studies, guidebooks, links to the podcast recommendations, documentaries, and others. We also have a survey. You'll see it in the chat for your feedback, and you can register there. So we have your email address as well. Thank you so much, Dave and Marian, for spending your afternoon with us, or Marian, it's early morning. And we thank everyone for joining us today. It's been a full session, and we look forward to seeing you in our next session. Thank you so much, and good afternoon.